We're live again. Hello, can you tell us who you are and a little bit about your project?
I'm Sam Winter, I'm the programmer, and
I'm Evan Frost, I'm the designer.
And we made a AR card game together. Players will combine spell elements in order to craft spells that they then sling at enemies in order to defeat our different enemies that we have throughout the dungeon. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit more about kind of the cultural background of the game?
Basically, one of the thoughts that we wanted to do with this game was, in most games that you play, your standard enemies are skeletons, zombies, or creatures from mythologies that everyone knows, that everyone's kind of used to. What we wanted to do was to find myths that really weren't featured and just use them as the basis for our game in a lot of areas. So, at least for this, what we have here is all your enemies are from Persian and Turkish mythology.
Give me an example.
Our primary enemy is, and I'm going to have to apologize because I'm very bad at pronouncing things, Angrimanyu, who is the central villainous god of Zoroastrianism.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So this is an AR card game. How much of your focus was spent on making a good card game or making a good AR experience?
So one of the first things we kind of focused on as like a design principle or a design goal is that we kind of were looking at other AR games, especially for one of the ones we looked at was Pokemon Go, very popular. So everyone kind of goes to that as their default look at how AR is being used. And Pokemon Go uses great use of kind of location-based AR, but its camera-based AR is kind of, it's just flavoring, right? It's just a visual flair. In fact, I would say most players turn it off in the end. And so one of our key design points was we wanted both AR and the physical elements to work off of each other. We wanted the game to essentially be unplayable without AR. You would get a completely different experience if you tried to play the game without the AR elements.
Can you give an example about how those two are, like how you've connected dots?
So our main core element is kind of based around this, the whole spell combining component. It was originally proximity based, so you would actually put the cards close together and then they would meld. We ended up playtesting this, and it became more of an issue than we were hoping because players were combining spell elements accidentally because they were just getting the cards too close.
The cat knocked everything over.
Yeah. So in the end, we kind of ditched proximity because we felt it was too sensitive, and we went with simply just players would set up they would have like a planning phase where they lay out all of the different elements, and then they would scan a card that would be like, I'm done with my turn. This is the end turn button of our game, because you kind of got to play that into you can't just you have to specifically indicate I'm ending my turn every time you want to end your turn. And so that was our way of doing it, was with this kind of combined spell. And so they would all merge at a central location, they would combine into whatever spell you're forming, and so it would then get flung at the enemy would automatically attack back, and it would just kind of quickly shift over to the next player's turn. And we just kind of kept this nice smooth game loop around the table.
That sounds like it's a stronger loop, but it sounds like it abandons a little bit of the AR necessity, if you will. Because you could write a 2D or even a 3D, but like a non-AR solution to that same thing.
Right. So you can technically play the game without the AR component, which is something we didn't really want. We've left a lot of it kind of behind the gate of using your phone, so we don't give specific details about spell combinations outside of them actually showing up and coming together in the actual digital version of the game. And so that's kind of important. We wanted to kind of force players, like, if you're going to play our game, you should play it the way we designed it. We meant it to be played. We wanted you to use AR. Please use AR.
Well, people are going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, we tried our best. Right?
Well, honestly, though, that kind of lesson is a valuable one to learn, that sometimes new tech is just there to be a selling point, and it's maybe not necessary, but eventually routes that use it and nothing else, but like routes that are specific to it, start to emerge. At least if the technology is permanent and not just a fad. So it's experiments like this is where the proving grounds are. So
yeah. Well, so along those lines, if I can piggyback on what Joe's saying, what did you learn?
Do you want to start?
I mean, so I can just start basically by saying that when you do play our game, the first thing you'll notice is that the biggest consumption of time is simply just making sure that the image target, that it recognizes it and know what's happening. Currently, AR, even though we researched as best as we could and tried several different methods, and AR Core is still the fastest of scanning these, basically, but it just takes too long for it really to be enjoyable most of the time. You spend more time trying to finicky to make sure that your framing is right. Even when you saw it, our art is a pretty good size, but you still have to center it and make sure it just reads it at times. And there are plenty of occasions even where
Right, that registration process is getting in your way.
and we'll just place a different element instead of the one that you scan.
Yeah, so a lot of this also is kind of external factors. One problem we had is, because we're at WPI, there's overhead lighting everywhere. And the problem is if you have your hand going over the image and you're scanning, your hand will often cast a shadow on all the cards. And so you've got to worry about the lighting, shadowing, and so that's why using really high contrast cards became really important, which is why you'll see a lot of our cards are kind of black and white to make sure that they get detected, because we wanted kind of reliability to be a key focus. Because as soon as you find your players seeing AR as the gimmick of the game, right, that's when you lose them.
Right. AR is such a new field. There's all these interesting problems like that with overhead lighting affecting things. You mentioned Pokemon Go earlier. Were there other things that you drew from, other games, other experiences?
Right, so actually the magic system that our game is all based around, our inspiration for that came from the indie game Magica. If any of you are familiar with it? You just have the 8 elements, and through whatever combination you blast away your enemies, and that was just, I enjoyed the hell out of that system. And
It's very freeform.
Yeah.
really it was that Sam mentioned previously a video where there's 2 cards side by side, and through the AR it merges those 2 into one thing. Upon seeing that, I really had the idea for what if you could do that with Magic. You see everything laid out in front of you, and then you turn that into your attack.
Have you ever thought about obscuring what the actual card can do and having AR be the only way you can reveal it?
So one of the initial things we had as an idea was because AR puts a hard constraint on art, we had actually planned to have one side of the cards be QR codes, one side of the cards be the information to play with the card, because you want to know what you're playing, of course.
Right, but one side was only one side needs to know, really.
Right. The problem is you just kept spending time flipping the cards back over and making sure that you've got everything set up and laid out. And if it was a very small problem, but we did notice it. With the elements, you could figure out what other player elements had and what cards were coming up next on the deck by the back of the cards if you split it up that way. And so,
I mean, really, for one thing, the other issue is that we have this it's all based on one person's phone. You only need one person's device in order to be able to play this game.
Gotcha.
If we went with that plan of you can only see what your information is when you're looking at it through the AR, then what that means is you have everyone else at the table sitting around just staring at these things. They can't do anything. They spend even more time on the turn.
I like that you've clearly articulated a number of stumbling blocks and lessons you've learned.
Those are valuable. That's more valuable than having a finished game at this point in your guys' careers. That turns you guys into seasoned developers, basically, especially the field as well as AR is.
Good. You have what's your favorite? And we got 1 minute. We got 1 minute. Dean's kicking us out, so I can't even ask the question. Do you want to ask us a question to take us out?
Hey, tell us a little bit about what your plans are from here on out with this. Are you guys going to continue it?
So we have actually some things that we had to eventually cut from the game due to time constraints, and so one of those was actually a board. We had some particular problems with how to actually set up a 3D board so that it wouldn't block certain elements, but I think the idea of kind of getting the movement to be a bit more important and maybe positioning to have a greater effect with kind of AR, either determining relative position between certain things or like where a monster is on the board determines some sort of status effect of said monster. I think something like that could really kind of pull the game ahead of where it is right now.
Sounds like a good plan to me. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.